Right. The girl everyone in America wants to get pinned by. It's Jill.
Oh, that's a good one.
Good morning, Jill.
Good morning. How are you?
I am good. You just tweeted you need public support to impeach, but you need public hearings to get it. Start hearings now. Fight Trump obstruction by going to court to enforce subpoenas and refusals to answer questions. Bipartisan support will follow as it did in Watergate. I could not agree with you more. I swear, if we don't talk for a week or so, there has already been so many blistering blowing through of norms, constitutionally and otherwise, hasn't there?
It's been an amazing week. And this morning there was a bad decision announced. I don't know if you've seen this.
Emoluments.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it just every day you had 200 refusals to answer written questions by Annie Donaldson at the direction of, no doubt, the President of the United States. His obstruction keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger every single day.
Yeah.
And
that's it. They continue to actively obstruct and suborn perjury, witness tampering, whatever you want to call it, every day. I mean, we have so much to talk about. But this in the New York Times, the Justice Department is seeking to discourage Bob Mueller's deputies from testifying, potentially jeopardizing an agreement for two of the former prosecutors to answer lawmakers' questions in private next week. So they're private citizens, Jill, right? Meaning the department cannot block their testimony, but they're saying it could have a chilling effect and give them cover to avoid testimony. Barr's obviously panicking about Mueller testifying, right?
You're right on all of everything you've said. I cannot believe that I only know one of the two deputies, Jim Quarles, was part of the Watergate office, not on the same trial team that I was on, but in the office. And I can't believe that he would be scared off by any threat from the White House. He's not under their jurisdiction. He's in private practice, which is where he was before he joined his former partner, Muller, in the investigation. And he should feel free to go ahead and testify and to be honest and forthright.
Well, and what you can tell what Republicans are going to try to do is show that all these people are biased against the president, playing to this ridiculous deep state conspiracy theory. But I think what we're going to find is, of course, they weren't. They were chosen for their abilities. And, clearly Barr, when he says it's going to be a spectacle for Mueller, the spectacle is that it will be clear that Barr completely mischaracterized Mueller's work, don't you think?
Yes, that would certainly be true. And Barr this week has really gone over the edge. I'm recused, no, I'm not. Well, I am on one of two things, but not the other. I mean, here's a man who was partners at Kirkland & Ellis, the same firm that Epstein's defense lawyers were at, and the same firm that Acosta was at. And Acosta has meetings in secret at a hotel, not in his office, with the person from Kirkland & Ellis, agrees to a ridiculous non-prosecution agreement that is against the law in terms of not even informing the victims. And Barr is connected to that because of that. And Barr is connected in another way because his father hired a non-college graduate, Epstein, to work at the fancy Dalton School in New York that he was the headmaster of, and put him in touch with all these young girls and boys. I'm not suggesting there are any allegations from, young men, but there certainly were from young women. And so I don't see any way that he can be involved. Barr, the Attorney General, can be involved given his father's involvement and given his law firm's involvement on either aspect of the case, either the investigation of whether Acosta was in violation of the rules of the Department of Justice by agreeing to the plea, or by the current investigation being handled by Attorney General Berman in the Southern District of New York.
So Jill, I mean, it's clear that this was like who knew Jeff Sessions would look like a good guy of any kind, but that Trump obviously screamed at him to unrecuse, as he did at Sessions, right? But Barr did it. So,
Exactly.
I mean,
Makes him worse. Makes him worse. There's no question that he is behaving in a way, and standing next to McConnell, making announcements about this, talk about looking totally political.
Yep.
Isn't even a pretense of being an independent Department of Justice. And without an independent Department of Justice, what has happened to equal justice under law in America?
Yeah.
It is really bad. And of course, I mean, the whole deal that Epstein got shows that there isn't equal justice, because no one without his wealth and power would ever have gotten a deal like that.
But I hate to say, I know you're obviously a prosecutor. You can't, without evidence, say things. But I mean, it just, to a layperson, it seems clear that Trump is implicated, or he wouldn't have had Barr unrecused. Because, so I think it was one of your colleagues, Mimi Rocca, who's, was an SDNY prosecutor, said people have outwardly expressed concerns that Barr is going to try to interfere if Trump is implicated in any way.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is a fear, and he seems to have no shame, which would normally stop people from doing something that's so obviously wrong. He seems to not have that characteristic, and so possibly he will do exactly that, even though it seems incredible to me that he would interfere in this very public and very well-documented series of events. And the indictment, people haven't focused very much on, does say that Epstein, with others known and unknown, which is a way that you identify people who are co-conspirators that you're not indicting, which could, which is exactly what
that would be a
happened.
second case that Donald Trump would be an unindicted co-conspirator in. That I mean, I'm just.
I mean, it's. There's that description of a party at Mar-a-Lago for 28 young girls, and Epstein and Trump were the only two attendees. Now, in fairness, I have to point out that there has been some evidence that Trump did break with Epstein at some point and made him no longer come to Mar-a-Lago, because it did appear that young girls, although I don't even know why they were working, since there are labor laws that, of course, Acosta is now in charge of those labor laws. But okay, there are labor laws that prevent people under the age of 16 from working, and yet there seem to be young girls recruited from Mar-a-Lago for Epstein's sexual exploits.
Yeah, you tweeted finding a way to ignore the Supreme Court regarding citizen census question, praising Epstein, attacking Muller, all in a day's work for 45 and Barr. All a threat to the rule of law and democracy, as we open the interview with. But talk to me about this. So a federal judge in New York blocked the Justice Department from replacing almost all the lawyers defending the Trump administration's effort to add the citizenship question to the census. Again, how so many legal experts, including you, Joel, have said how beyond normal this is, right? I mean, it just, it's, yeah. The order suggests Judge Furman is viewing those departing lawyers as essentially witnesses to potential misconduct whose testimony may be relevant to a sanctions motion. Okay.
All true.
Yeah.
It's all true. I mean, sanctions would be really unusual. It doesn't get granted often, but this is a case where it well might. They said to the court that we have to have an answer before June 30th in order to print these questionnaires, and so the court skipped the Court of Appeals, went from the district court to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court acted expeditiously to meet that deadline, did so, and now they're saying, well, okay, maybe there's another way that we can do this. The court said, basically, you are lying in saying why you want this question. It's a pretext for a political wrong motive to get this question on, and so we're not allowing it. And now they're saying, well, we'll find another excuse. We'll find another reason. We'll find another way to do it.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, just think about logically listening to what I'm saying and saying, well, obviously the first one was a pretext, and of course the second isn't going to be the truth either, because if it was the truth, they would have used it the first time.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what they have in mind. And the fact that all the lawyers wanted off the case because they didn't want to go to court and be party to a false statement and ruining their own credibility. Not just one, not all of them, though. All wanted off. And that says something. And so you now have a situation where some government attorney, it's sort of like the Saturday Night Massacre, where you had a moral and ethical attorney general and deputy attorney general. They refused to fire Cox. And then the Solicitor General became the acting attorney general, and he did it. So, yes, eventually the president will find someone to go to court. Hopefully the court will continue to stand tall and strong and say it's just as much a pretext, and no, you can't do it.
Yeah. Jill, let me ask real quick. Sorry, I never have enough time with you. The Emoluments case. So the ruling obviously is for Trump, but they're saying the attorney generals of Maryland and D.C. did not have standing. There is a separate lawsuit from congressional Democrats. Right. Do you feel like that is going to be better on the standing issue?
I'm hoping someone has the standing to raise the issue, because it seems to me to be a clear violation to allow foreign governments to give profits. And remember, he's supposed to be turning any profits over to the government or to charity. I can't remember what he promised to do. It doesn't matter, because he won't do it anyway.
Right.
And we'll never know, because if we don't get his tax returns and his financial information, how would we know whether he is or isn't doing it? And one of the things that was lost was in the case that just got kicked out, which could be appealed and might be reinstated. The attorneys general of D.C. and Maryland talked about appealing for a ruling from the full bench of the Fourth Circuit instead of just a 3-judge panel.
Right.
And then, of course, they could also go to the Supreme Court. But it was very close to discovery. Subpoenas were pending for the financial records that would show whether or not or how much profit was being made, and whether any of it was being turned over as promised to sort of clear his clear conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And whether the standing will be upheld in the congressional Democrats, it's hard to say. I thought that it would be in this case, because it had already gotten past the district court, and the district court made a lot of sense in saying they had standing. So it's very hard to predict.
Okay, yeah. No, sorry, Jill, and one last one, because I know the House Judiciary is voting to authorize subpoenas. So this one for the alleged obstruction of justice, but this is about the horrible child separation border policy. Yes. I mean, I do have sympathy for Congress in that they're not just dealing with Watergate, Jill. They're dealing with such a blistering array of criminality and corruption. But this is why I agree with you that I think we have to streamline this into impeachment, don't you? I mean, I know you're a Pelosi fan, and you are such a classy, elegant lady. Like, you don't ever threaten or name call or stuff like that. But what is your thinking on what Pelosi's thinking is, or why even the majority of House Democrats are not for it? It seems like such a no-brainer to me. We've got 70% of the Democratic Party, the base, is for impeachment. Most of our major frontrunners are for impeachment. I just feel like it is so critical that we be together as a party. What would your advice be?
I agree. I cannot explain why Pelosi feels that it could help Donald Trump. I think that it will hurt the Democrats to do nothing.
Thank you. Me too.
I can just tell you from my Twitter feed that people are saying, what's the point of being a Democrat? They're no different than the Republicans. They aren't doing anything. When are they going to take action?
Do you think they're waiting for Muller next week, and do you think that will be a turning point?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I think it will be an important point. I think the most important thing he could be asked about is that he is a fact witness to the misrepresentation of the report by Barr. And to that, he can testify to facts and evidence. To the rest, if you ask the right questions, you can highlight the important parts of the Mueller report, the part that needs to be put into plain and simple language. Instead of saying, if we could have, we would have, you need to have said as, we did not in any way exonerate the president.
Yep, exactly. Jill, so sorry. We're late as usual. I wanted to tell you, though, you got a compliment this week on the show, not just for your brilliant legal mind, but for being the owner of the best Chicago accent on television, period.
Well, it came with the territory. What can I say?
Well, tell them that in Schaumburg and see what they see.
I love Chicago.
Me too. All right. Love you. Bye.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, Jill. There she goes. Yeah.